Before your daughter comes home, check what's hidden behind the living room painting. My sister Beth's voice trembled so violently I barely recognized it. 8 o'clock on a Friday evening, and Sarah had just left a finalized plan for a graduation celebration with friends. What are you talking about, Beth? I dusted there just this morning. My pulse quickened. I knew that fractured tone, the same one from our childhood when she discovered something terrible. Helen, please, just listen. What she's concealing there is far worse than dust. The truth is taped right behind that frame. Her words dissolved into a sob that sent ice through my veins. With trembling fingers, I made my way to the living room. That painting had occupied the same spot for 15 years, ever since Emily and David moved in after losing their apartment. A simple composition of crimson flowers that my daughter had selected to brighten the space. I'd never cared for it, but I'd kept silent. Like so many other things in recent years, I'd learned when to hold my tongue. I lifted the painting carefully. It felt heavier than I remembered. My arthritic joints protested, but something in Beth's voice lent me strength. As I turned the frame over, I discovered a manila envelope secured to the back with tape. My name was written across it in Emily's distinctive handwriting. Mom, urgent. Open only in case of emergency. My hands shook as I tore the envelope open. Inside lay documents, letters, official forms. The first sheet stole the breath from my lungs. An admission application for St. Raphael's Home, a facility for the elderly. My name appeared as the patient. The admission date was scheduled for 2 days after Sarah's graduation. Emily's signature appeared at the bottom, identifying herself as my legal representative. Oh my God! I whispered, feeling my legs weaken beneath me. I continued reading. Letters addressed to my pension administrator, requesting a change of direct beneficiary. David was listed as the primary caregiver authorized to manage Mrs. Helen's resources due to progressive mental incapacity. Mental incapacity. Those words danced before my eyes like daggers. The third letter pierced deepest. A fraudulent psychological evaluation signed by a doctor I'd never encountered in my life. The patient exhibits clear signs of senile dementia and erratic behavior. Immediate commitment is recommended for her safety and the safety of her family. Lies. All lies, written in cold, calculating script. My memories transported me back to that spring afternoon 20 years ago when Emily came home in tears after losing her job. I'd embraced her in this very living room, stroked her hair like when she was small. Don't worry, sweetheart. Mom will always be here for you. I'd given her my life savings so she could study nursing. I'd sold my mother's jewelry to pay for her textbooks. When she met David, I'd invited them to live with me because they had nowhere else to go. Your mom is an angel, David used to tell me in those early years, kissing my forehead after dinner. I don't know how to thank you for everything you do for us. Emily would smile from the kitchen, her hands covered in soap suds, washing the dishes I'd cooked for them. Mom, you're the best grandmother Sarah could ever have, she'd say while I watched the baby so she could rest. When had everything changed? When had my affection become bothersome? When had my conversations become interruptions? When had my presence in my own home started to feel like a burden? The final document shattered my soul. A letter from Emily to David, dated 3 months earlier. I spoke with the lawyer. Once she's committed, we can sell the house. With the $1,200 from her monthly pension, plus what we get from the sale, we can buy something better on the north side. Sarah doesn't need to know anything until she finishes college. The phone rang. Beth again. Did you see it? Her voice was broken. Helen, I didn't know how to tell you. Sarah called me a week ago, crying. She found the papers in her parents' room and brought them to me. I couldn't believe my own niece. Her voice cracked. How could they plan this behind your back? I closed my eyes and drew a deep breath. My heartbeat thundered in my ears like war drums. 25 years working as a secretary at City Hall. 25 years saving every penny to purchase this house. 45 years raising Emily alone after her father abandoned us. And this was my repayment. I heard the key turn in the door. Emily was home early. Quickly, I returned the documents to the envelope and tucked it beneath my blouse. I rehung the painting. fighting to steady my shaking hands. "Hi, Mom," she said without looking at me, heading straight for the kitchen. "Did you already eat dinner?" "Yes, sweetheart," I answered in a normal voice, though I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet. I watched her walk to the refrigerator, open the doors, survey what was available. The same woman who'd grown in my arms, who'd wept on my shoulder during her first heartbreak, who'd called me her hero the day she graduated from nursing school. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day," she said, pouring herself a glass of milk. "Sarah's graduation is at 10. Then we have the family lunch." She smiled at me, a smile that now seemed as false as everything else. "I hope you're feeling well, Mom. We don't want you getting too tired." "We don't want you getting too tired." Her words echoed in my head with sinister undertones. Of course they didn't want me tired. They needed me presentable for Sarah's graduation. After that, I wouldn't matter anymore. "Sleep well, Mom," Emily said before climbing the stairs to her room. Her footsteps sounded like hammers pounding on my soul. I remained alone in the living room, the envelope burning against my chest like hot coal. Outside, rain began pelting the window panes as if the sky wept with me. I slowly climbed the stairs to my bedroom. Each step felt as heavy as a mountain. Once inside, I removed the documents and spread them across my bed. I read them repeatedly, searching for some mistake, some explanation other than the cruelest betrayal I'd experienced in my 68 years. But there was no mistake. Everything was perfectly planned, calculated, executed with the coldness of a perfect crime. My mind traveled to that Sunday afternoon 3 months ago when David suggested, for my own good, that I stop cooking. "Helen, you look exhausted lately. Let us handle the kitchen." I'd thought it was consideration. Now I understood it was a first step to prove my incapacity. The following week, Emily told me I'd forgotten to take my blood pressure medication. It was a lie, but she wrote it in a notebook. "Mom forgets her medication. Worrisome." I remember when they started speaking in hushed voices, falling silent whenever I entered the room. "We're just discussing Sarah's graduation gift," they'd say with rehearsed smiles. Lies. They were discussing my future, my destiny, my living death. They were treating me as though I were already dead, as if my opinion was worthless. My phone vibrated. A text from Sarah. "Grandma, I can't sleep. I'm so nervous about tomorrow. Are you awake too?" My granddaughter, my light in all this darkness. She didn't know anything. Or perhaps she did, and that's why she'd taken the documents to Beth. My heart broke thinking about the pain she must be enduring. I replied, "I'm awake too, my love. The nerves are normal. Tomorrow will be your most beautiful day." I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't destroy her graduation with this nightmare. But I couldn't continue pretending ignorance either. I rose and walked to the window. The rain had intensified. Drops slid down the glass like the tears I couldn't shed. I needed to be strong. I needed to think clearly. Tomorrow, after graduation, they would execute their plan. 2 days later, I'd be locked in St. Raphael's home, reduced to just another number while they enjoyed my house and my money. "No," I whispered into the darkness. "I won't allow it." I searched my closet for the shoebox where I kept my personal documents. Inside was my will, written 5 years ago. Everything left to Emily and Sarah. I also found the house deed, my identification, my savings passbook. I had $3,000 saved that they knew nothing about. Money I'd been secretly accumulating for the day I wanted to take a special trip with Sarah. Now that money would serve another purpose. I took out a sheet of paper and began writing a letter. My hands trembled at first, then grew firmer, more determined. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, it's because things unfolded as I expected. I want you to know that everything I'm about to do is for love. Love of you, love of myself, and yes, even love of your mother, though she may not understand it now." I stopped writing. Love. How could I speak of love when they betrayed me in the vilest way? I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. This wasn't the time for sentimentality. It was time for survival. I returned to the fraudulent documents. I studied every line, every signature, every date. The doctor who'd signed the psychological evaluation was named Robert Matthews. I'd never heard that name. Surely David had contacted him through an acquaintance at the hospital where he worked as a nurse, an unscrupulous doctor who would sign any paper for money. St. Raphael's home. I looked up the phone number online. It was a terrible place, according to the reviews. Abandoned seniors, mistreatment, horrible food, adulterated medication. A place where people went to die slowly, forgotten by the world. A place where my voice would never be heard, where my complaints would be interpreted as dementia, and where my money would be used to pay for my own torture. My memories took me to that Christmas 2 years ago, the last time I'd been truly happy in this house. Sarah had arrived with a beautiful green dress she'd bought with her first paycheck from her part-time job. "Grandma, this dress is for you. I want you to wear it on Christmas Eve." Emily had protested. "Mom doesn't need new dresses. It's an unnecessary expense." But I'd worn it that night and felt beautiful, alive, important. Now I understood why Emily didn't want to have new dresses. A woman who takes care of herself, who feels attractive, is a woman who has hope. And a woman with hope is dangerous to the plans of those who want to bury her alive. I placed all the documents in a new envelope and hid them inside my Bible. Tomorrow, after graduation, I would need proof. I also took my phone and photographed every single page. If something happened, Beth would have the evidence. It was 2 a.m. when I finally lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced, planning, calculating, preparing for the most important battle of my life. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Fear had transformed into determination, sadness into anger, resignation into rebellion. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Emily going to the bathroom. Her footsteps sounded different tonight. They were no longer the steps of my beloved daughter. They were the steps of a stranger who planned my destruction while I slept trustingly under the same roof. When she returned to her room, I heard whispers. She was talking to David, probably discussing final details of their perfect plan. They felt so safe, so clever. Tomorrow they would discover they'd underestimated the woman who'd given them everything. I sat up in bed and looked out the window. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of moon peeked through the clouds. It was like a sign, a light in the midst of the darkness my life had become. Tomorrow everything changes, I muttered silently, and for the first time in a long time, a smile formed on my lips. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of determination, the smile of a woman who'd hit rock bottom and was ready to rise. I woke before dawn with mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. My body moved with purpose as I showered and dressed for the most important day of Sarah's life, and perhaps the last day of my life as I knew it. I chose my yellow dress, the one that made me feel elegant and powerful. If these were to be my last hours of freedom, I would live them with dignity. I went downstairs early and prepared Sarah's favorite breakfast, pancakes with syrup and fresh fruit. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture charged with genuine love, not the desperate, pleading love I've been offering lately, but the firm, powerful love of a grandmother protecting her granddaughter to the end. "Good morning, Mom." Emily appeared in the kitchen, looking nervous. She'd put on an elegant black dress, as if she were attending a funeral. How appropriate, I thought. In a way, she was, "Why are you up so early?" "It's my granddaughter's graduation day." I replied with a genuine smile. I wanted everything to be perfect for her. Emily looked at me strangely. She hadn't heard me speak with such energy, such vitality in my voice in months. Her eyes scanned me as if searching for signs of something suspicious. "Mom, after the ceremony, we're going to lunch at Aunt Linda's house," she said, pouring herself coffee. "I hope you feel up to it. It's been a very intense period for the whole family." Intense? What an interesting word to describe the months she'd been planning my disappearance. "I feel wonderful, sweetheart. Very lucid." I emphasize the word lucid and watch her tense almost imperceptibly. In fact, I feel clearer than ever. David came down shortly after, wearing his best gray suit. He greeted me with that false smile I could now see right through. "Helen, you look beautiful today. That dress is lovely on you." His words sounded hollow, but I responded sweetly. "Thank you, David. You look very elegant, too. Sarah's going to be so proud to have such a united family." The word united hung in the air like bitter irony that only I could fully savor. Sarah appeared, radiant in her cream-colored graduation dress, a smile illuminating the entire house. "Grandma, those pancakes smell delicious." She came over and hugged me tightly. In that embrace, I felt all her love, but also a deep sadness she was trying to hide. She knew something. My poor granddaughter was carrying the weight of a secret she shouldn't have to bear at 18. "My beautiful princess," I whispered in her ear, "today is your day. Enjoy it without worrying about anything else." I felt her relax in my arms. For a moment, we were simply a grandmother and her granddaughter celebrating an important achievement, as it should be. During breakfast, I observed my family with new eyes. Emily constantly checked her phone. David maintained superficial conversations about the weather and the day's plans, but their eyes met constantly in a silent language of complicity. Sarah, meanwhile, tried to stay cheerful, but sadness peeked from her eyes every time she looked at me. "Grandma, are you going to be in all the pictures after ceremony?" Sarah asked as she finished her pancakes. "Of course, my love. I wouldn't miss a second of your special day." I looked directly at Emily and added, "In fact, I want us to take many pictures together. Memories are the most important thing we have." Emily choked slightly on her coffee. "Yes, Mom, many pictures." Her voice sounded forced. After breakfast, while everyone was getting ready, I seized the opportunity to call Beth from the kitchen phone. "How are you this morning, sister? I've been worried about you, Helen. Are you sure you can handle this alone?" "I have to, Beth, but I need you to know something. If you can't reach me for a few days after today, don't worry. I have a plan." I explained in whispers about the documents I'd photographed and gave her the login information for my email account where I'd saved all the evidence. "Helen, don't do anything dangerous. We can report this to the authorities. And who's going to believe us? Emily is a nurse. David works at the hospital. They have a doctor who signed a fraudulent evaluation. I'm just a 68-year-old woman whose word is worth less than the paper they wrote their lies on." My voice broke slightly. "But don't worry. I won't do anything to put Sarah in danger." I hung up just as Emily was descending the stairs. "Who were you talking to, Mom?" "Beth. I was telling her about the graduation." Technically, it wasn't a lie. The drive to university was tense, but full of anticipation. Sarah was radiant in the front seat, talking about her future plans, the university where she'd study medicine, all her dreams. I listened from the back seat, recording every word in my memory like a priceless treasure. "Grandma, when I'm a doctor, I'm going to take good care of you," she said, turning to me with that smile that was my reason for living. "My love, you already take care of me more than you know," I replied, and I saw in the rearview mirror how Emily gripped the steering wheel tighter. The graduation ceremony was beautiful. Seeing Sarah walk across that stage, receive her diploma, smile with pride, it filled me with deep, genuine happiness. For a moment, I forgot everything else. I was simply a proud grandmother celebrating her granddaughter's triumph. After the ceremony, during the family photos, I noticed something strange. Emily and David made sure I appeared in very few pictures. "Mom, why don't you sit here in the shade? The sun is very strong," they'd say. "Helen, why don't you go get some water? We'll continue with the photos." It was as if they were already erasing me from the family history, as if they wanted little evidence of my presence on this important day. My heart hardened a little more with each subtle exclusion, but Sarah noticed. "No, I want all the pictures with my grandma. She's the reason I made it this far." She took my hand and pulled me to the center of the family group. "Grandma, without your stories, without your support, without all the nights you helped me with homework when Mom was working, I wouldn't be here." Her words were like daggers to Emily, but for me, they were like a bomb. My granddaughter valued me, loved me, recognized me. That gave me strength for what was to come. During lunch at Linda's house, Emily's sister, I watched how everyone interacted with me. Linda treated me with that typical condescension toward the elderly, speaking to me slowly and loudly as if I were deaf or stupid. Sarah's cousins barely spoke to me. It was as if I were already a ghost in my own family. But there was a revealing moment when Sarah was in the bathroom. I heard Linda whisper to Emily, "Is everything ready for Monday?" Yes, all confirmed. 9 in the morning, Emily replied in a low voice. Poor thing. I hope it's for the best. It's for the best for everyone. Linda. She can't live alone anymore, and we can't take care of her 24 hours a day. Lies. I didn't need 24-hour care. I could cook, clean, bathe, dress myself, manage my medications, do my shopping. I was completely independent. But they constructed a narrative where I was a burden, a problem that needed to be solved. That afternoon, back at home, Sarah stayed with me in the living room while her parents went upstairs to rest. Grandma, can I ask you something? Anything you want, my love. Are you happy living with us? The question broke my heart because I saw in her eyes that she already knew the answer. Sarah, happiness doesn't depend on the place you live, but on the people who truly love you. But do you feel loved here? I took her hands in mine. They were soft, young, full of future. My love, I feel loved by you, and that is enough to keep my heart beating. Sarah burst into tears. Grandma, I don't want you to leave. Leave? Who said anything about leaving? I heard things. I saw papers. Her voice broke completely. I held her tightly. My princess, sometimes adults make decisions they think are right, but they hurt deeply. But I want you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter where I am, you will always be the light of my life. Promise me we'll always keep seeing each other. I promise you that as long as I live, I will find a way to be near you. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on my bed with a fraudulent document spread before me. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, 2 men from St. Raphael's home would come to get me. Emily would tell them I'd had an episode during the night, that I'd been confused and aggressive. David would confirm the story. The fake doctor had already sent his report. Everything was perfectly orchestrated, but they didn't know that I knew the plan. And that advantage was going to change everything. I woke at 5 in the morning with a determination that coursed through my veins like liquid fire. Today was the day Emily and David believed would be the end of my story, but it was going to be the beginning of my rebirth. I dressed carefully, choosing my most elegant outfit, a wine-colored suit I'd purchased for my niece's wedding 2 years ago. If they were going to try to strip me of my dignity, I would at least look impeccable while fighting for it. I went downstairs silently and made coffee. I needed every fiber of my being alert for what was coming. As the aroma filled the kitchen, I took out my phone and sent a message to Beth. Today is the day. Remember everything we talked about. I love you, sister. At 6:30, I heard movement upstairs. Emily and David were rising earlier than usual. Of course, they had to prepare to perform their perfect theater. I heard their voices whispering, but I couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. I already knew exactly what they were planning. Emily came down first, looking nervous but trying to appear normal. Good morning, Mom. You're up early again. I couldn't sleep well, I said, which was completely true. I was thinking a lot. Her eyes sharpened. Thinking about what? About Sarah, about how proud I am of her, about everything we've experienced together in this house. I paused and looked directly at her. About how quickly a person's life can change. Emily poured her coffee with slightly shaky hands. Mom, sometimes changes are necessary. Sometimes things just can't stay the same. You're right, sweetheart. Sometimes things just can't stay the same. I repeated her exact words and watched a shiver run down her spine. David appeared shortly after, already dressed and groomed as if he had an important appointment. Good morning, Helen. How did you sleep? Very lucid, David. Incredibly lucid. I emphasized a word I knew terrified them. A lucid woman was dangerous to their plans. Mom. Emily cleared her throat. Today, some people are coming to visit you. They're doctors. They're going to ask you a few questions. Nothing to worry about. Doctors? What I need doctors for? I feel perfectly fine. It's just a routine checkup. David intervened quickly. You know, at our age, it's important to stay on top of our health. At our age, I repeated slowly. David, you are 42. I am 68. We're not at the same age. An uncomfortable silence filled the kitchen. Emily and David exchanged panicked glances. My response had been too sharp, too precise for someone supposedly suffering from dementia. Of course, Helen, I misspoke, David stammered. Don't worry, we all misspeak sometimes. Even doctors misspeak sometimes, don't you think? My smile was sweet, but my words were sharp. Sarah came down shortly after, still in her pajamas, her hair messy. Good morning, family. Why is everyone up so early? She came over and kissed my cheek. Did you sleep well, Grandma? Like an angel, my love. I dreamed about you. Really? What did you dream? I dreamed that you were very brave and that you always defended what was right, no matter how hard it was. Sarah looked at me with those deep eyes she'd inherited from me. Dreams are sometimes premonitions, aren't they, Grandma? Sometimes they are, my princess. Sometimes they are. Emily stood abruptly. Sarah, why don't you go upstairs and get dressed? Your father, and I need to talk to Grandma about the doctors who are coming. What doctors? Sarah frowned. It's nothing important, David said quickly. Just a checkup. But Sarah didn't move. She stood next to me like a soldier guarding her general. Is Grandma sick? No, my love. Grandma is perfectly fine, I assured them, keeping my voice firm. I have never been clearer in my entire life. At 8:30, Emily asked me to go to the living room. The doctors will be here soon. Mom, why don't you sit comfortably while we wait? I walked to the living room, but before sitting down, I did something that surprised them. I walked over to the painting of red flowers, the same one where I'd found the documents, and straightened it slightly. This painting always hangs a little crooked, don't you think? I watched Emily turn completely pale. David coughed nervously. They knew that I knew, but they didn't know how much I knew. Mom, come sit here. Emily guided me to the sofa with false gentleness that made me sick. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. My heart accelerated, but my mind grew calm. It was the moment of truth. I heard male voices at the entrance. Low conversations, approaching footsteps. 2 men entered the living room, wearing white uniforms. They weren't doctors. They were orderlies from St. Raphael's home. One was burly and bald. The other thin with glasses. Both had that professional but cold expression of those accustomed to dealing with rebellious seniors. Good morning, Mrs. Helen, said the burly one. I'm Carlos, and this is Michael. We've come to escort you to your new home. My new home. I feigned total confusion. But I already have a home. This is my home. Mom. Emily approached with fake tears in her eyes. Remember we talked about this? You're going to a very nice place where they will take better care of you. I don't remember talking about that, Emily. My memory is perfect. My voice grew stronger, and I don't need to be taken care of. I can take care of myself. The orderly Carlos removed some papers from his briefcase. Ma'am, we have a medical order here. Your family is concerned for your safety. What medical order? Signed by whom? I stood from the sofa with dignity. I haven't seen any doctor recently. Michael, the thin orderly, took a step closer. Ma'am, we know this can be confusing for you, but it's for your own good. Confusing for me? My voice rose. The only thing confusing here is how 2 strangers can enter my house with papers I never signed, talking about taking me to a place I never chose. At that moment, Sarah appeared in the living room. She'd been listening from the stairs. What is going on here? Who are these men? Sarah, go back to your room, Emily ordered in a tense voice. No. Sarah planted herself firmly next to me. Where are you trying to take my grandma? Carlos consulted his papers. Young lady, your grandmother is going to a specialized home where she will receive the care she needs. But my grandmother doesn't need specialized care. She's perfectly fine. Sarah took my arm. Grandma, do you want to go? I looked at my granddaughter, then at the orderlies, then at Emily and David, who were standing near the door as if to block any escape. It was time to play my first card. No, my love, I don't want to go anywhere. This is my house, the one I bought with my own work, where I raised your mother, where I've watched you grow up. I turned directly to Carlos. And I want to see that medical order you claim to have. Carlos handed me the papers with some reluctance. I took them and examined them, as if it were the first time I'd seen them. This doctor, Robert Matthews, when did he examine me? According to our records, 2 weeks ago, Michael answered. How strange, I said aloud, because I don't remember seeing any doctor 2 weeks ago. In fact, I haven't seen any doctor in the last 6 months except for Dr. Ramirez for my annual blood pressure checkup. A tense silence filled the room. Emily started pacing nervously. Mom, you forget things sometimes. I forget things. I turned to her with a force that made her step back. Emily, tell me exactly what day I went to see Dr. Matthews. Who took me? What hospital was it? How long did the consultation last? Emily opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. She had no answers because no such consultation had ever existed. I don't remember exactly, but you do remember that I forget things, right? My voice became as sharp as a knife. Doesn't it seem strange that I would forget an important medical consultation, but you remember perfectly that I forgot it? Sarah looked at me with admiration. I could see in her eyes that she was understanding that her grandmother was not the confused old woman her parents had been describing. Carlos cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ma'am, we understand your confusion, but we have specific orders. Orders from whom? I interrupted. From the ghost doctor who never examined me. Or from my daughter who wants to get rid of me to keep my house and my pension? The silence that followed was deafening. I had put all the cards on the table. There was no turning back. The words I had just spoken hung in the air like time bombs. Emily turned white as a sheet. David began stammering, and the two orderlies looked at each other with obvious discomfort. But it was Sarah's expression that hit me hardest. Her eyes filled with painful understanding and a rage I'd never seen in her. Take your house and your pension? Sarah repeated my words slowly, looking at her parents in disbelief. What is Grandma talking about? Sarah, your grandmother is confused. Emily tried to explain, her voice trembling. She doesn't know what she's saying. I am not confused. My voice resonated with a strength that surprised even me. I am clearer than I have ever been in my life. And it's time you all knew that I know every detail of your plan. I walked over to the painting of red flowers. Without taking my eyes off Emily, I lifted it off the wall. The sound of the frame hitting the floor made everyone jump. With deliberate movements, I tore off the remaining adhesive tape from the back and held up as evidence. This is where you kept the fraudulent documents. The commitment application that you signed behind my back, Emily. The papers to transfer my pension to David. The psychological evaluation from Dr. Robert Matthews, a man who never existed in my life. Carlos and Michael instinctively took a step back. This was not what they'd expected to find. A supposedly demented old woman who knew specific details of legal documents did not fit the profile they'd been given. Ma'am, Carlos cleared his throat nervously. We just follow orders. If there's a problem with the documentation. Of course there are problems with the documentation. I turned to him with royal dignity, because all of this documentation is based on lies. I have never shown signs of dementia. I have never been evaluated by the doctor who signed these papers. And I have never, ever given my consent to be committed anywhere. Sarah moved closer to me and took my hand. Her voice trembled with emotion. Grandma, is it true? They really planned all this. My love, 3 days ago, I found all the documents hidden behind that painting. Signed applications, scheduled dates, even letters talking about selling this house once I was locked away. Every word was a dagger aimed at Emily's heart. That's not true, Emily finally exploded. Mom, you've been very confused lately. You forget to take your medication. Sometimes you don't recognize people. I don't recognize people. I laughed bitterly. Emily, I perfectly recognize the daughter I raised, who I educated, to whom I gave all my love and money, so she could study. And I also perfectly recognize the woman she became, a stranger who plans to commit her own mother to steal everything she has. We're not stealing anything, David shouted, finally losing his composure. We're doing this for your own good. For my good. My voice became dangerously low. David, tell me exactly how locking me up in St. Raphael's home is for my good. Explain to me how taking away my house, my freedom, and my dignity could possibly be good for me. Because you can't take care of yourself anymore, Emily mumbled. But her voice had lost all conviction. I can't take care of myself. I stood to my full height. Yesterday, I made breakfast for the entire family. This morning I got up, bathed, dressed myself, made coffee, and held a completely coherent conversation with you, with David, and with these gentlemen. What part of that indicates I can't take care of myself? Michael, the thin orderly, took out his phone. I think we need to make a call. This situation is not clear. Excellent idea, I exclaimed. Call your supervisor. Tell them you came to pick up a supposedly demented old woman, but you found a completely lucid woman who knows all the details of a family conspiracy to steal her assets. Carlos began putting the papers back in his briefcase. Ma'am, we cannot proceed if there are family disputes about the documentation. There is no dispute, Sarah said in a voice I'd never heard, cold and adult. There is an attempted fraud, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows about it. She turned directly to her parents. Did you really think you could do this?